Ooh.
Then you're getting towards the end. Oh, here we are, man.
Oh, we're here.
We're
Live
here.
on the beaches of Nyamos once again. Once again.
Once again, we've
We're
done
out
it
here.
again. With the greeny green nogs and all the rest.
Yeah.
If you're watching this on the YouTubes, obviously, poor Adam.
We're out for Adam right now.
I know, right? He like caught in another asteroid field. This guy just can't catch a break. So not with us this week, but we're going to cover the High Republic because that's what we do. We're going to talk about it and do our things and soldier on. This is what Elzar Mann would do. This is what Abel Chris would do.
Yeah, I worry about his contemplations about that, but yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, when I say we're here, we're going 200 years into the past.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to the High Republic.
Yeah.
This week covering Eye of Darkness by the magnificent George Mann. Just really, truly epic book. Ben, what did you think about this book?
Oh, it was like a drink of cool water in the Tatooine like desert. Like it was. It was delightful. I mean, so last week I do want to apologize to our Spotify listeners. There was a podcast last week. It just didn't come out on Spotify. It came out on all the other platforms, but not Spotify. And I don't know why, and we'll figure it out.
Bob Iger was mentioned a few too many times, and
dude,
strings were pulled.
It. Jenny, that's what my wife thought too. Is like, did you mention COVID? It's like we're not COVID deniers. We aren't like saying anything. Like I don't know. It might have gotten flagged. Maybe the Iger stuff, but it was
we
like
love Bob Iger. You brought a golden age of Star Wars. We love the guy.
I love Bobby I. Let's go.
We're just gonna call it what we see and what we read. That's all we're gonna do. We're gonna keep doing what we do.
Anyway, so that was a little hiccup there that I wasn't proud of. But we'll see how it goes this week. This week, hopefully, it'll all be out. But anyway, so last week we talked about that. It was a multi-chapter book getting us into the High Republic. We're covering just High Republic in this month. It was some great stories there. Buryaga was found and discovered by Bel Zettifar. That might be one of my favorite Star Wars stories of all time, honestly. And we'll
the
get
persistence was impressive and definitely I find just kind of awesome in terms of like a Jedi persevering to find their friend.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was so beautifully sort of.
But I love how he got back to his roots. He was just like he was like, and he's he's invoking Loden Greatstorm. I wish we had more Loden, like because he is a real G, and and he's just like he just took it one person at a time. He found some people that need help. He helped them. He learned a new trade. Like, I don't know if it's my blue collar roots. Like, it's just like, like I grew up in a hardcore blue collar town and like, that's what you do. You just, when you help out, you can help out, you help out, like that sort of thing. And that's all he did. And like, just became a sailor and like ingratiated himself with some people by just being a good human being, not being arrogant, even though he has all these superpowers, essentially.
Right. And the narrative device of Bell thinking about Loden, I think, translates to this book. And it's just sort of that angle is Bell's angle, where he's constantly reflecting on his past with his master, his training, things like that, to kind of push forward in the plot. I love that about the character. I think I love his story in this book in particular. I feel like his whole angle and exploring the edge of the storm wall and that whole part of the book is just so cool. Yeah. And as it cuts back to that, I like that story quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how George Mann kept this one tight. So this is our first novel of phase 3, which is a huge, huge deal. Like we're finally pushing the story that's been kind of put to bed for a while, for like over a year, almost 2 years, right? That started at the beginning of the High Republic series in phase 1.
Right. This is a continuation of phase 1 because phase 2 was a backstory sort of
prequel. Right.
Prequel.
Just like the Skywalker saga, phase 1's in the middle, phase 2 is the prequels, and phase 3 now are the sequels. So, yeah. So this was a huge deal for me. Just exciting to see where it's going. And George Mann, I thought, did a fantastic job. He kept it super clean. It turned into like different sets of POVs. So you had, like you said, Bel-Zettifar and Buriaga were like the storm wall. You had Elzar Mann and Chancellor Lena So were like a buddy comedy, not comedy. Nothing was actually funny at all. No,
it's just
buddy, like
harrowing that people are lost in the occlusion zone, which we'll talk about.
Super high stakes in this book, man. Like it's been a year. There's a time jump of a year to this book where they're just like the Nihil have captured a portion of the galaxy and set up this impregnable wall, and they're just like trolling the galaxy, like trolling the Jedi and the Republic with their viciousness.
After the fall of Starlight Beacon, the Jedi and the Republic are in disarray, but they're attempting to strike back against the Nihil. But the Nihil are now protected by the Storm Wall, which is like a disruption field that like wrenches ships out of hyperspace and disrupts communications, and like almost nobody can enter what is Nihil space. Yeah. And at the beginning of this book, it's fascinating because you have like Gira Staros trying to represent the Nihil and trying to create put peace talks in the calendar for everybody, and then but it's like, how can you negotiate with terrorists?
Yeah, they executed a Jedi in the most horrible way. A Grand Master, Pratre Veter, my guy. Like, poor dude just got done dirty.
Right in the beginning of this book too, like it's the first thing George Mann hits you with is Pratre Veter, just his assassination, execution, and all that stuff. It's terrifying. Yeah, it's great stuff to create the stakes right away.
I mean, that's one thing I think, particularly the High Republic cadre of authors have done really well, is raise the stakes and make the villains terrifying. Because now it's just like, it just like Marchion Ro is just spitting on the graves of dead Jedi and in his wake, and like he's winning more battles than he's losing, and it's and they're now spreading their influence, and it's just like it's terrifying. There's no say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, at least it's an ethos, to quote Walter Sobchak. These are nihilists, man. They believe in nothing. They're just like
you get a sense of his motivations by the end of this book, and he is no good. He is out for murder. It's
and revenge.
I mean, he doesn't care about having peace with the Republic. He wants to take out the Jedi, and obviously this all stems back to the Path of the Open Hand, and it rhymes. It's
his great grandmother.
It's all about this sort of anti-Jedi collective terrorist organization, and it's like it's truly frightening, and like they've got to figure out a way to get in there. At the end of this book, we sort of have keys to figure out how to strike at the Nihil, the heart of the Nihil, but like we don't know. We still don't know where that's all going. But so the other story angle is Avar Kriss and eventually Porter Engle, who is my favorite character.
Oh, the Blade of Bardata?
Even in the character encyclopedia, he's like the first Jedi featured. And I was like, that's because he's the baddest and he's incredible as a character. It's like Baylan Skoll and Porter Engle. It's like these characters are too much for me. Like calm down, Star Wars.
They're two of the most badass Jedi of all time.
It's awesome. So Avar Kriss's angle is so cool though, where it's like she hangs out with an Ugnaught for most of this book. And on Headstone.
I have spoken.
She's sneaking around she's been sneaking around in Nihil space for a year, basically trying to find clues to, the heart of the Nihil, how to get off the planet, how to get back to Coruscant, all this sort of stuff.
And generally just helping people.
And helping people as well.
Whenever she can, That's what that's one thing, a theme that comes back here a lot is sort of like what are the Jedi? This is what we talked about last week, was just like that's the real philosophical question. Like, what does a Jedi make? Like how do you make a Jedi? What is your goal? What is the whole ethos? And so you've got a lot of these desperate Jedi that are stranded alone, and they're trying to figure out their role in the galaxy now. It's like they knew what it was when it was the true High Republic and everything was gleaming and beautiful. But it's like when you're desperate and alone and in trying times, what is your role? Like, what do you
But
do?
it's sort of exploring attachment, I think, throughout the book
Yes.
as well, where it's like, when Jedi are alone or when Jedi feel like they're, without their order or without their companions or their fellow knights and masters, like is there a sense of longing? Do they want to reunite with these people? And yes, they do, because when Avar reunites with Porter Engle, she's like, this, it's like a panacea. I feel cured of the longing and the sickness that I felt alone and sort of afraid. And like when she saw Porter for the first time, and then obviously Elzar at the end of the book, it thematically rhymes where she again sees a Jedi that means a lot to her, and it's that basically the book ends on this note. Like, this person matters a great deal, and I'm super interested to see where the Avar Elzar storyline is going to go at the end of this book. I'm like, okay, this is going to be the epic sort of relationship at the center of the Jedi, I guess.
And so I finally took a peek because it's been a while. So I wanted to see how long Phase 3 would be. The answer is real long. It's so not going to finish till 2025. It's like all through next year. The last book, Charles Soule's book, comes out like spring 2025.
Well, we can talk about sort of some of the history or the grimoire, or the lore that's developed in this book with, certain characters like Aslan Rel, basically.
Yeah. So that's an XYA novel. Yeah, it's called Tears the Nameless, I think, and it's I don't remember
the Fallen One.
Yeah. And they keep talking about, this is a side story. Yeah, the Fallen One. I know you love this. Aslan Rel, so new character, bunch of new characters in this book.
Yeah.
But he is a fallen dark side, a Jedi that has fallen to the dark side, but he's still like boys with Yoda because reasons. And Yoda's pulling him out.
Yoda called him up, by the way. To the DMs and was like, we need you.
We need you. I got a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, he's going to help us. So like, I feel like I'm missing comics that lead, like, I want to see Yoda go find this dude. Like, I want to see him bring him in. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I do know that Tears of the Nameless, it's going to be Aslan Rel, it's going to be Reath Silas, and it's going to be another dude that I don't know his name.
Okay, very cool.
But that they're going to explain, this is like a side mission. So they've kind of broken down, how are we going to defeat the Nihil? They're like, we need to penetrate the storm wall, right? That's one thing. And we need to, get communication and find out what's going on inside. But we also, like, the Jedi led by Yoda says, we need to figure out what the Nameless are. He thinks that the Nameless and the history of the Nameless and their role in this is key to defeating the Nihil and all that, which is a stretch, but it's going to be awesome because I think there is a larger story. They're not just this one-dimensional, like, boogeyman creature. There's something else. Like, the Nihil serve a purpose, and we don't know what that is yet, but I think we're going to find out in future books, and probably that a lot in that YA novel that's coming out in a couple months, I think.
Yeah, I do wonder if it will connect to larger canon material. Like, we see the advent of the Sith within the Nile, and it kind of sort of connects back to, the Sith in hiding in some way. And or I wonder if, we explore Malachor and sort of the history there, because all those Jedi got petrified, essentially. Yeah. And something did that to them. Either the super weapon or possibly the Nameless, like something. There is a way to connect it back to canon in a really fun way. But I also would be happy if it's a completely new territory and sort of sets up a different, larger event in the past, or or it just sort of connects the Nameless to the Nile in a way that is fascinating, which George Mann's proven to do in this book. Is just many, many fascinating concepts back to back. Jedi attachment. How do you negotiate with murderers? And then helping people when you can, and trying to figure out what you can do to better everyone's lives around you, which seems sort of muddy in the Outer Rim, where people are surviving any way they can. And the Republic has sort of, they haven't even explored certain areas here. It's only those kind of robber baron families like the Grafs and the Sentekes and the Staroses of the galaxy that have sort of explored deep space and understand which worlds are sort of populated and what you can do there. But Nihil space is expanding in this book. Like, literally, they're only winning. Like, the Nihil are just getting dub after dub in this book.
as always.
Yeah.
That's like
it's tough to witness, honestly, or read. I'm just like, what is wait? No, like there's no way that the dial basically expand the storm wall like Marchion Ro is Jigsaw on a galactic scale. It's
exactly.
It's like, what is happening right now?
I know. It's just like he'll just keep kicking the Jedi's butt, man. It's like it's tough, and like the Azar Chris stuff. I'm sorry, Avar Chris, right?
Yeah.
She like her stuff on Hetzel, like brought it home, right? And I was like, it made me long for the first novel, where I was like, oh yeah, they got some dubs in the first novel, and they're like, but little did I know, like that's the last win they were gonna get for a very long time.
Right. The first novel is like some Superman.
Yeah.
Film where it's just essentially like the Jedi, like a great disaster occurs, a lot of objects, fly out of hyperspace and hit planets and ships, and people are in distress, and the Jedi just come in and just get a fat dub and help everybody.
They mop up. There's a battle against the Nihil. They just like rout the Nihil. A couple fighters are lost, but then they're like, wow, that was terrible. We lost like a couple people. It's like little did they know. But they ultimately routed the Nihil, and, and now, here they are, then Valo was like this, monstrous, awful, like terrorist attack. And then, of course, Starlight Beacon getting plucked from the sky was awful. Like
there
awful
is a poetry to the
ways.
Books, though, in that like Starlight Beacon is an inverse Death Star.
Yes!
It's basically like it's very cool in that regard, I would say. It's cool to think about. But yes, and then Starlight Beacon, the fall of Starlight Beacon, and now this new boundary, the storm wall. Like I don't know what I think about it yet. I feel like it's fascinating in the book for all the characters to sort of figure out like technical workarounds where they're like, oh, we need to go to a station or a buoy, and sort of disrupt the relay field just right in that area, and then get through with as many ships as we can and all that sort of stuff. And it's just really cool plotting. It just seems very overpowered at this point. Like Marchion Ro can just expand it. And I'm like, where did this tech come from? Who built this? Like, what is going on here? Yeah, I'm very confused about that.
I think it was Astaros that actually built it. I remember, I think in that Valo book, they were working on some tech, and I think that might have been this tech. But I can't be sure. I remember there was like, cool. Remember there was like a Staros, I think, there's like some technician that was being shepherded out of Valo that was like working for the Nihil secretly, or it was like looking for the highest bidder, and it was this crazy tech. It might have been this. But I don't know. That there's no substantiation to that. But yeah, you're right. It's like, so that was one thing that this book taught me. I was just like, well, tech rules the galaxy. It's always like a Death Star, or it's like some crazy like manipulation, or like whatever Zahn's up to, like whatever new ship Zahn finds to Thrawn.
Yeah.
Thrawn. That Thrawn finds, and like he'll use some little piece of tech to turn the tide, where it's a TIE Defender, or like in the novels, it's like cloaking ships, or like, whatever it is. And this is another case of that. It's this storm wall that's like impenetrable to any signals whatsoever. You can't hyperspace through it. It's too big to go in slow space through. It's cool. It's really cool. That they're doing it, but it's tough to wrap your mind around for sure.
Or it's just the expanding part was just a lot. Yeah. I was like, whoa, okay, I guess Marchion Ro can just expand. And what's interesting is I'm trying to figure out like what the poetic commentary is of it expanding to sort of certain sectors like the Siswana sector, which is where Eriadu is, which is sort of a central hub for the Empire 200 years later, and a place of extreme, order and authoritarian rule, and just an awful place where basically, Tarkin is the oversector moth of all the Outer Rim territories, and I imagine that incorporates Eriadu, his homeworld, and so it's probably just brutal on that planet. It's probably just a planet of extreme order, and like, and so I imagine like the commentary here is that like the Jedi and the Republic allow like the Nile to take a system like the Siswana, like the Eriadu system, like, and then the Empire rules, like you can't imagine anyone gaining territory within the galaxy, because Eriadu is sort of the main hub aside from Coruscant.
Yeah, right, because it's Tarkin's homeworld, and we saw that in Bad Batch. There's a lot of major communications and meetings with higher ups going on there. Tarkin's homeworld, man. So you know what? I thought it was Iadu from Rogue One when I was reading.
Oh no,
that's what I was thinking.
Iriadu. It's Iriadu.
Yeah, right. This is tired. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, no problem. But just trying to find whatever kernels of sort of narrative sort of commentary that they're trying to explore. And that was one I was like thinking like, well, how does he expand this far into the galaxy? And then he expands to certain worlds that we know about from the later timelines. I was like, what is this whole storyline about? Like, what does Marchion Ro mean? You know? That's for me. That's what these books are all about. It's like what you're saying. What does Jedi mean? I'm like, what does Marchion Ro? Who is Marchion Ro? That is my whole thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right, dude. I had the same thoughts. Because it's like last week I was like, what is a Jedi? And I'm still like that. Like what does it mean to be a Jedi? But it's like now it's like, what does it mean to be in the Hill? We're trying to figure out what Marchion Ro's endgame is because it's chaos, it's anarchy. He doesn't want to be part of. He has his girlfriend, Garrus Daros, like with her own end goals to actually try to reel him in a little bit. And she wants to be a senator for Nihil space and a representative and work. But it's like, that's not what Marchion Ro is about. It's like, he's like the Joker, dude. He just needs dynamite and gasoline.
He didn't want the peace talks to even take place or he didn't care if they fell through because he was like, I just want to destroy the Jedi. And you were just like, okay, this guy's just a mustache twirling. Like I have to destroy the Republic and the Jedi.
Yeah. And but like, what is their endgame? It's like, what are you going to expand Nihil space till you own it all and it's all chaos? Like, I don't know. I don't think he can do that. It's like already Yoda's like, he's too far stretched thin with this expansion. We'll see if that bears out to be true or not. But
I like the imagery of a storm and a storm wall and sort of the Jedi quelling the storm because this book over and over again, the theme is that the Jedi have to quell the storm within themselves constantly.
Yeah.
They're constantly dealing with loss and they're suffering like this, these three phases, like the Jedi have just gone through an absolute gauntlet.
Yeah. And by proxy, the readers have also gone through that gambit of just pain and suffering. I'm like, please, just at the end of this, there is a great part, Avar Kriss breaks through the wall. She figures out some tech from Porter Engle and she gets out and she gets, and she reunites with the rest of the galaxy, most importantly, Elzar Mann and the council. And there's a communication thing. And like, that's the big dub we get out of this. But Porter Engle's futures in doubt
too. Yeah, Porter Engle gets left behind, but takes a drill ship, tries to get out. Yeah. Like it's so cool. It's really cool action sequencing.
Right, and it ties back to that comic.
Because Vice is he confronts Vice again, and they're both like 200 years old. They're like old. Yeah. They're basically both their species can live for a very long time, and they meet. They couldn't fight each other again.
Right.
Vice is such a cool character. She's actually just plated with Beskar armor, like a Mandalorian. It has like a Beskar spear.
Yeah.
Like polearm, and she's just a super cool character.
Yeah.
Lots of art of her.
And she ties back to that comic book series, The Blade. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So it's like, so that tied in that comic, which was a fantastic comic about Porter Engle's early life, his adopted sister,
Barash Sylvan. Yeah. Where the Barash vow comes from, basically. If you've read the Vader comics and you know about that Jedi that basically took the Barash vow and Vader confronts him. Yeah.
Yeah. So really cool stuff. I mean, there's
she has green eyes. She's like the coolest Star Wars character I've ever seen. And I was like, how do you pull up green eyes? Yeah, Barash Sylvan. Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Would love to see that character in live action. I think Porter Engle's the coolest character I've ever seen ever. Like he's an Ikrukian with his like horns cut off, I think. And so it's
I don't think they have horns. I think they just have the stubs. I think
stubby things at the top of his head. It's just a cool looking species.
He looks like Hellboy pretty much. Is like that's the species, but like I don't think they ever grow horns. I think they just have those like two stubs on their forehead and that's it.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen one with horns.
Sure.
But I've there's been Ikrukians before, I think, in like Return of the Jedi, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
he fights Feast, and it's very cool.
Yeah, everything Porter Engle does is cool. Like every chapter of his is just lovely. He's just so centered and so at peace with life and death, and is just like trying to finish his story in a poetic way and like do the right thing for people he knows. It's like it's the wisdom of old age. He's lived this long life, and so he's just a better Jedi for it. And so he's kind of on the other end of this, maelstrom, this gauntlet that Avar and Elzar and Belzetifar are just at the beginning of, like really starting to go through real strife and real problems in their life. And, Elzar's known that his whole life. And, so he's a little better equipped to handle all of it, but everyone else is freaking out, They're freaking out.
Are we going to talk about Elzar's pull to the dark side at some point? And sort of like the idea that like basically just how emotionally connected he is to Avar Kriss and sort of like what we think might happen with his kid. I feel like there's just so much foreshadowing that he's going to fall to the dark side in a major way. Like it's just so apparent in this book.
Yeah. I mean, my first note, I'm have my notes in front of me, happened in the first third of the book. It was like, all around Elzar, the Senate was bustling. The clamor of voices seemed to press in on him, noisy and oppressive, drowning out his thoughts until he was lost at sea. The silence contained within the raging heart of the maelstrom, empty, hollow, and alone. It's like, and I was like, darkside.org?
Yeah. Yeah. Elzar falls to the dark side?
Yeah. I mean, and it's over and over. And then he literally, we have his inner monologue because it's a book and it's great.
Right.
And he's going, he feels real pull to the dark side, and he always pulls himself back. But it's just so this is my question for you, Grant. Do you think it's the will of the Force that Elzar Mann turns to the dark side?
I think Marchion Ro, like you said, is the Joker. So I'm guessing that final confrontation is going to end in a sacrifice where someone is basically pulled into sort of a room that's rigged to explode, or something that's just not going to go well for either them or Marchion Ro. And so I'm just worried about what that means, and and also if Marchion Ro hurts someone like Avar Kriss, Elzar Kriss is definitely going to Elzar Mann is definitely going to
lose his
probably snap, and then or I would love it if it's sort of playing it that Elzar will snap the entire time, but then it basically subverts your expectations and Avar snaps, because the beginning of the books, it was all about Avar Kriss, and I was just like, oh, maybe this character is going to have some major climactic resolve with the villain over anyone else, essentially.
Yeah, I
would like Avar Kriss to snap.
That'd be cool. I mean, it's already been precedented that Elzar Mann has snapped in that Valo book.
Right.
I think it was Claudia Gray that wrote it, and he did, and he was insanely powerful, and he was riding a dragon, throwing starships into other starships. He was OP with the dark side. And it could be that. And I love that you're subverting it, but that was not my question. My question is do you think it's possible, all right, that the Force would make someone turn to the dark side in order to actually even out, rebalance the Force? Because I kept waiting for Porter Engle's oh yeah, I could pretty much kill everyone in the Nihil right now, but I just really feel that's not our thing, and I just want to get the information. The information needs to get out. I'm the information, this guy could just systematically destroy pretty much everybody. And
Porter does talk about the hand of the Force.
Yes.
At a moment in this book where he's talking to Avar Kriss, and he's like, the Force has a hand in this, or the hand of the Force is at work here. And I'm like, that is very cool. The Force is, motivating certain people to do certain things, and it's it is a course corrector.
Right.
And I mean, what you're saying is are you, it's almost is it validation that Vader was what you're talking about? Someone who
No,
the Force sort of made fall to the dark side to even out the scale of like Force users and sort of
no,
like.
I think it's because like that's the one thing in the High Republic is they're so goody two shoes. They're like they don't want to kill anybody, and it's like even in like in the face of this like pure terror, pure chaos, murderers, just like people that just want to kill. They're like abjectly
Right.
evil. They still don't want to kill anybody. And it's really hurt them in a lot of places. And like I agree with the storytelling they've done with like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you know, not killing Vader and Luke Skywalker and like all these people that are just like, no, I'm not gonna just like murder someone.
Right.
But like, do they want Porter Engle to go John Wick? Because I want Porter Engle to go John Wick.
Well, wait, hold on. We were on a different question. We're going straight to Porter Engle going John Wick.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the Force wants Porter Engle to go John Wick. That's like in order to like balance the power.
Sword fighter in
because
the order, basically.
If they were like okay with just killing like Nihil, they could just like storm them and just murder everyone.
Yeah, but they don't, and you get to hear about their inner thoughts in this book, which is that when Avar and Porter basically sneak aboard, is it Mellis Shrike's ship or is it Visa's ship? Yeah, I think it's Mellis Shrike's ship.
Mellis Shrike,
they basically like when they attack, they basically fight the Nile, but then the Nile like run away, or they like they're basically like terrified of the Jedi, and Avar Kriss is like thinking to herself, she's like, why are they running away? Like, who are we to them? Like, we're here to like bring peace, and like we're just here to help people. Like, if you don't want to fight, just lay down your arms, and a Jedi is not going to kill you.
Right.
They're going to help you immediately, and you're probably not going to get a terrible sentencing, and they'll probably help you relocate out of the occlusion. Right. They are peacekeepers first and foremost, and she's just bewildered by like just the prejudice and the fear that these people have. She doesn't understand it at all, and I'm like, this is fascinating because I totally get this wavelength. Like I totally, I think it has to be part of the commentary of books that predate the Star Wars films, given that you have to imagine Jedi were, what Obi-Wan said, they were peacekeepers. And people knew them as that, hopefully, because hopefully their PR team got out front and was just like, we bring peace and we're here to help. Like first, I hope that's what the first thing they sort of said.
Yeah, and I mean that ties back to that short story we were talking about with Bell Zettifar and Loden Greatstorm, where it sort of goes back and forth with two things, and they just exist in a world with people and are just good people, and just them being good people on this tiny little micro scale around other people, just like, hey, do you want help with that? I'll help you with it. Like, we'll just put that over there. So like we'll just help you with it. Like, and then they just help people like on a little scale. Like, oh, do you need help with that? Great, I'll help you with that. Don't worry about it. You don't want anything. Right. Like, we'll just do it. And like it shows the whole town what they could be. Like. That's my favorite flavor of Jedi. I think like that's really at the core of it. It's just like when you're just a good person and it's not arrogance. It's just like helping people. It resonates and it shows other people how they should act. And obviously there's larger messages there, but the
Jedi, so fascinating in this book because you do get to witness sort of the council discussions, and you do get insight into what all the Jedi are thinking politically about the negotiations with the Nile. And Oppo Rancisis, I gotta call this guy out right now.
Oh yeah,
he thinks that beef? Like Gira is like they should continue the talks, and bringing Gira into the the Republic as some sort of legitimate representative of the Nile is good, or like will maybe tame the Nile. I think he says at one point. I was like, okay, bro. Like this is, and then you have other people like Keaton Murag, who's like furious at Aslan Rel. Like it's so cool to see the council sort of untethered and like, I don't know, like I love that stuff in these books.
I do too. So something you might not know about me, I am a huge Winston Churchill fan.
Sure.
Just I love his oratory.
No, he's like, I grew up. My stepdad was British, so I totally understand the Winston Churchill love.
he's like a poet commander. I just love reading his speeches. They're fascinating and beautiful and enthralling and great. So I just watched another. I think it was The Gathering Storm. It was a film from 2002. It was Ridley Scott and Tony Scott produced it. Very cool.
I know The Darkest Hour. I didn't know.
Yeah, Darkest Hour was great. I've seen that too. I watched The Gathering Storm and then Into the Storm, and that was
okay. So you had a Winston Churchill day. You just
week really. Yeah,
week.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah,
yeah. It was 2 different nights that we did that. But both were.
I mean, but a lot of parallels to what we just read.
Well, so this was the thing. Darkness. You know, it's like it was like before Winston Churchill was PM. You know, they wanted to pick a guy that wanted to parlay with the Nazis. Like, this was their thing. They're like, well, they're right there. They're at death's door. Like, yes, obviously there's concentrations have already started. They're killing Jews. They're like doing all these things. And yet there was like people within that party, which I totally believe after seeing current politics, that were just like, well, maybe we should just negotiate with them.
Yeah. I know Ken Burns is putting out a documentary about World War II and sort of who knew what when. And I'm dying to watch that documentary because I just seeing politicians today and seeing the same sort of just truly evil representation of sort of whatever their principles are. It's just like there's a lot of just real sort of bad people in politics.
Kissinger should be finally died, and it's like if you want to listen to a good podcast about Kissinger, Behind the Bastards did a 6-parter with the Dollop guys, Dave Anthony and Gareth Reynolds. It's hilarious and terrifying and very illuminating, and you're like, oh, okay, like this makes sense. But it was he essentially should have been hung for high treason in the 70s. But like Democrats are too spineless to do anything. Anyways, the point of
spinelessness. I think that's what I want to key on.
Yeah, the spinelessness on the liberal side and the audaciousness on the Republican side. It's like, and it's the same thing happened then, and here we are 50 years later, and the same thing's happening now, and it's just a little infuriating. Anyways, the in this thing, it's just sort of like they're having that conversation of just like, should we just negotiate within a hill? And even though they've just been like eating our lunch. All these times, and they've done all these horrible
attacking
things.
A fair about like the Republic Fair, basically on Valo, which was a place where people were sharing ideas. It was like a hub of innovation and celebration.
Yeah, and the Chancellor was on the ground for that. I mean, she was like stuck in that, and Elzar saved her life. She lost her leg in that battle. Like she knew like just how horrific that was. I mean, crashing Starlight Beacon is like. I mean, it hurts
Starlight
me as a
just
reader.
There to help people. It's like, it's like 5G. It's
yes, exactly.
It's absolutely there's no way
it's 5G for the masses.
Anyone, even Gira Staros, would have sympathy for the Nile. Yeah. You're just like, what are you doing? Like, Marchion Ro basically sits on a throne on the Gaze Electric. Like an H.R. Giger-esque like starship in Star Wars that is just like, of course this guy is evil. Like, I don't know what is going on.
We're gonna trust this guy? No, I love that conversation because like it's like that whole relationship between Elzar Mann and Lena So, and Lena So is like drawing Elzar out into his new role. Like he's essentially has to fill Stellan Gios's role as just like this like stud of the Jedi that they can commune with and talk to with the Republic, and and just like be another voice of reason beyond the council. Which is like the council's the council, right? And Elzar finally like comes out of his shell, and he's just like, he's like, my heart tells me these people are terrorists and like they will never relent. And it's the same thing that happens in Britain, and because of Winston Churchill, that's just like, we will never give up. We will fight to the end. Perhaps this, island will be taken, but not while anyone's alive to fight for it. Like just that line in the sand, burn the ships. Like, no, we're going to fight till the end on this because that's the right thing to do. And, they have that conversation, but then when the book ends, they're actually, because, when the exclusion zone expands and they suffer another loss, they're actually considering doing it. And Avar Chris's escape may have changed that fate. We don't know by the end of this book, but like that's kind of where the council is just like, let's just try to parlay for peace and see what happens. Is kind of their last gambit. It's the only thing they have, and it's
right.
terrifying.
So when you think, and so when I think the hand of the Force and what the Force is doing, tying back to your initial sort of question, Avar getting back with the information from the EX droid that she has, the information about how to penetrate the storm wall.
Yeah.
Where Markion and Lightning Crash Station, possibly maybe the coordinates for that place, which Markion Rowe mentions at one point in this book, which seems to be a pivotal location that we'll probably explore in future stories. But she's back now with this information, this vital information. I think it's time for an assault. Like, I think that they're ready. Like, they now have the information.
So there was another throwaway line at the end of the book, and Markion Rowe's like, they think they've solved it, but we've patched up the old holes and the old blah blah blah, so they might not be able to get back through with that tech because Markion his people have already realized what the flaw was, and I think Markion.
Yeah, but they don't have a Ram Jammeran, all right?
Right, they don't. This is where, I mean, Kevin Tarr is a real G. I love Kevin Tarr. But, like, Ram Jammeran needs to come into this biatch and fucking make
Well, who's going to work with, like, the data, basically? And
It's Kevin Tarr, which is so funny because, like, one of my best friends' name is Alex Tarr. And so I can't help but think about Alex Tarr being like, yo, man, like, it'll be, like, fine. Like, that's, anyways, and also Kevin Tarr, not a very Star Wars name, but like he's the guy. He was at the first book. He was at the first Hetzel like disaster.
Yeah.
He was the guy that pulled everything together, and they like brought together all those droids. Remember that they like daisy chained 1 million droids to fix something or other. And Kevin Tarr is their guy. He's their tech guy. But like Ram Jammeran, man, I mean that's the guy I'd be calling.
That's who. Yeah, that's who I'm hoping gets involved. But Yeah. Can we talk about some of these characters?
Let's go.
Okay. Let's get into it. Oh, Pratre Veter. I mean, rest in peace. I just
R.I.P. We hardly knew him.
Yeah.
And we didn't see it in a comic, him getting captured or anything. Or did he get captured at the end of the last Phase 1 book?
I think so. Yes. Yeah. Follow Starlight. I think he
got captured. Okay.
Fallen Star. I believe that book's called. Anyways, we get a lot of the council, but who else do we have here that we haven't talked about? Balin, the Ugnaught? Belin, yeah.
Belin?
Yeah. Belin, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a classic like Jedi moment where like Avar Kriss is just so alone. She runs into this crazy Ugnaught, Belin, with all the swagger of Lando Calrissian and the flying chops of Han Solo. And like, she doesn't really know it. She, it's a tiny, funny looking package that she's dealing with. And, but him and all his crassness, like he sees her, like they feed off each other's goodness,
Right.
She's like, no, this is the right thing to do. We're going to bring this food. He sees her heart get broken. We realize it's not enough food for any amount of time. But then that like kind of inspires Belin to be a better person too. And then he's like ride or die with Avar. He's like, this is the right thing to do.
Grain transporter. Yeah. He's like, he's just looking out for himself. And, but then he wants to help with the mission. And he's sort of one of the classic sort of arc of like side character who wants to get involved and help the Jedi. But his whole, you can't even talk about Belin without talking about Real Dyro, which is a character who's the spokesperson for the Nile, but forced to be a spokesperson.
She's Anderson Cooper of, sorry, that was the first name. The Galaxy.
But Anderson Cooper was basically held hostage by CNN. Yeah. That's basically who she is. Very cool character. Reminds me of Sinjax from the Rebel Rising book.
Yes.
Yeah, with Jyn Erso, where it's like there's basically an Imperial spokesperson, Colonel Sinjax, who very cool character.
Rebel chief of propaganda, Yeah, no, I mean, so that's another thing that ties into current stuff. I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm sorry to get on the really real so much, but it's like the role of media, especially since like listening to this Kissinger stuff, because like,
dude, it
the media.
There are so many political sort of corollaries with this book right now and in history, and it's a common thing where you are dealing with threats that are chaotic and murderous, and yet that there is a sort of political heaviness to their own agenda that is basically like, spilling into the minds of everyone around them in the peripheries and in the disenfranchised, regions of, of whatever place that they dominate and control all news and media and what people hear. And Real Dyro is definitely a component of that, where she's a spokesperson for it all and forced to be so. And it's dark. But keep going.
And
you're talking about all the connections.
I am. I mean, and that's a common theme of the Nihil, where they just take things that are the bastions of the Republic and then they twist them and make them, a symbol of danger and evil. But yeah, I just think like, the media, they can, there's a difference between reporting facts and reporting truth. And because the facts are always a selection of facts. It's not all of them, but it's like they have a responsibility to tell the truth. And anyway, sorry.
It's a narrative once you sort of curate the order of those facts.
Right.
Whereas the Jedi, I think, stand for truth. And the Republic is about seeking truth. And the Nihil it's just so clear that, in their name, the Nihil, they believe in nothing. They believe in
chaos, anarchy. Yeah.
Pessimists, chaotic, pessimistic sort of anarchy.
Survival of the fittest, which is, and like, I love how this book, this book like mocks survival of the fittest so hard in a beautiful way, where it's just like, no, survival of the fittest, everyone dies. It's like, that's not how it's, that's not a functional, real, ethos.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, this book was lit. Like, I
went in on all the political.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, this guy, George Mann, like, he wrote the audiobook Battle of Jedha, and that was not my favorite story. I'll just say that. Like, it was not my favorite story, maybe because it had to be an audio play or whatever. Like, I don't know. But this book was a titan. It was fantastic. It's a great book, and I think it really showed off all of George Mann's best assets. Like, it definitely had a different vibe than all the other authors, but it was fantastic. It was like really cerebral. It really got into the inner workings. It took a lot of time to like be in the characters' brains and like, what their thought processes were, and like really rolling everything over in a minute way. And it was fun. It was a good book, and it was like we said, I mean, it was very emotive. It was a very intellectually stimulating set of like situations that didn't really have any clear answer, like any of them, and that was titillating. It was great.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I feel like all the exploration into the Nile, which I would love to talk about, just some of the Nile and Markion Ro and Thea Fair and Gira Staros and Bulin. Just shout out to Bulin, the Ithorian.
Yes.
Just absolute weirdo scientist.
Mad scientist. New character.
But they basically do George Mann did a lot of work to set up the Nile. But the Nile have taken a turn where it's basically like they're now essentially all out for blood and all out to prove themselves to Markion Ro. And so it's this incredibly sort of like barbaric fighting force that's now just out there. And George Mann spends a lot of time with them and exploring that whole thing. But what I love is that he does it through the lens of Gira Staros, who still has light in her. And she sees the value of democracy. She sees the value of the Republic.
I mean, only to leverage her own power, but And like, it's interesting because like to the outside of the occlusion zone, everyone's like, we're getting our asses kicked. Like, how are we ever going to bounce back from this? Yeah. But inside the occlusion zone, inside Markion Ro's inner circle, like they all feel like this can't be sustained because it's like they're just killing each other to jockey for position. And no one wants to get, like, people are like, yo, we won. Like, shouldn't we be, reaping the spoils of like our victory and like enjoying our life? Like, what is the end game here? And like, that's the existential question that is not answered, and we're still all wondering about, like, what is the end game for Marchion Ro here? Like, they're just like, are we just gonna all kill each other till there's no one's left? Like, to be higher up in the echelon, like, I mean, are they capitalism? Like, is that what that is? Like, it's just like we just keep eating each other, like, until we're all dead?
No, I think I was going to key exactly in on that exactly, where it's basically like, is their mantra like this dog eat dog mantra? Is that just highlighting that anyone who's got a chaotic or murderous ideology, it's sort of, it'll become a factor wherein they don't trust each other. And you get that with Melish Strike and Vice, basically, when Melish Strike is like, Vice has arrived to, I guess, provide backup to Melish Strike, but Melish Strike is also like, Vice might be out here to like kill me. This might be another Storm, or this might be another this is a strike team that's like,
this is Vice's protege, Melish Strike, right? And like Melish Strike is like imitating her and doing all the things that you find endearing normally, but she's like a sycophant. And it's it's very much like the Sith, where it's like, I will train you until you become a rival, and then I'll kill you. Or when your usefulness is done, you're dead. Like, it's a very similar ethos.
And I think that commentary is really useful and important to sort of put out there in the world, which is like that wherever there's extremism, those people who are going through that are going to have extreme views of other people around them and things like that. It's going to be dark, and it's going to be a problem. And so I think that's interesting commentary. If that is indeed what George Mann's trying to get into, what all the luminous writers are trying to get into.
Right. I mean, and in that way, I think it might be George Mann's greatest triumph. I mean, it's such a subtle commentary on current politics. It's like, you can't draw direct lines. Like, it's not a George Lucas tone poem. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's there if you really like look to compare it, and it'll sit with you because it's so striking, like his writing and these stories. But it is so current, and yet he's written it in a way that's just like, you don't draw direct lines. It's just like but the lessons are there. I'm not speaking,
and we can talk about it because it's complete fantasy. Like, this is actually has no relation to our real world, because the Nile are just a ridiculous spacefaring, pirate organization. Like, it's just an interesting way to actually talk about the politics that have plagued humanity.
And that's why I love science fiction, because it's like, you can take a sort of, it's a philosophical argument, right? You pull a different situation into a vacuum, and you learn from that situation that has nothing to do with anything else. And and so you can play with these thoughts and ideas and really think about them from different, perspectives. And
and they even talk about Marchion Ro being a sort of showman and doing well in the spotlight, or whenever he's given a platform, he does really, really well, especially when he's broadcast out to the galaxy and things like that.
He started gaslighting the galaxy, right? Like, he started being like, everything's great in the occlusion zone. Everyone's fed well, and everyone's happy here, and it's all starlight and kisses and unicorns. And it's like, they're all starving, and it's terrible. It's like, North Korea, right?
Yeah. Essentially the real world comp is North Korea, or even Russia to certain regions, given that, we don't know what's going on. But it just feels like,
when you control the media, it's whatever you say it is.
Right. It's, people are basically suffering on these worlds, but he is out there spouting that, oh no, but like the storm wall protected, the citizens of Nihil space, and just talking in terms of providing support to people who are within the occlusion zone. And it's like, that they're anything but that. There's just patrols going around looking to murder, any agents of the Republic. So
and they're still doing raids outside the occlusion zone. It's just like, come on.
It's powerful stuff. Like, this book is just fantastic.
I think so. We've gotten to most of it. I mean, one thing I wanted to come back on is, you had mentioned like, because I think it's amazing. It's a complete flip of the like original trilogy. It's like in this one, the Jedi want order, and then the Hell are chaos. They're not revolutionaries, and like they don't have the, that idealistic like, oh no, these are our oppressors, and we're gonna do like. They're chaos. Like they're not real revolutionaries. They're just like terrorists. But it is funny that it's like it's the Jedi now that want order. It's the Jedi that had that giant space station, that got destroyed. It's like it's a complete flip of it, but it's not done in a really obvious way. It's just like, but it's a really fun flip of what we know in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, it really is, and I just love that Yoda basically he talks about what he thinks everyone should do, and it feels like that might be just the direction of where these books all go and what's going on here, which is, learn about the Nameless, figure out their connection to the Nile, and then the truth will reveal itself to us, and it's sort of that.
Yeah.
That idea is very interesting to me. And I feel like if the writers are going to code anything anywhere, it's going to be that Yoda sort of has it all figured out at this point. You know what I mean? And Yoda is in each phase, probably does say something that outlines the phase essentially. And so
they're
I wouldn't
just
be surprised if they do more.
And I'm pretty sure it's the next book. It's called Tears of the Nameless. It's a young adult novel, and it's written, I'm pretty sure, by Tessa Gratton.
Oh, she's fantastic.
I think I just pre-ordered it this morning. It was 4 a.m. I finished this book at 4 a.m. I woke up in the middle of the night and just was like, couldn't go back to sleep. So I started reading.
That little well part, you just shifted up and you were like, got your pillows right.
Dude, I've been dreaming about the High Republic for the past week. Like, no doubt. Like, because like my brain wants to make sense of it. Like, my brain just like wants to be like, how are they going to penetrate the storm wall? Like, that's been my life for a week. And but yeah, so it was good to finish it, and but like Avar gets out, and like she goes to a council meeting because of course she does, and has to report, and Elzar Mann is there, and they're both just like, and like the secret recordings that Elzar Mann like sent that he didn't think anyone heard.
Oh, that's
and
right.
She heard like that. I openly cried when Avar listened to that recording.
Yeah, like KC-78. It's sort of a Last Jedi moment where KC-78, I think, plays a hollow recording that Elzar made, and he's like, I'm a wreck without you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is attachment, and the Jedi are feeling it right now. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like I would love there to be more of a romance with the characters. Like I would love them to sort of create a romance within the Jedi and two Jedi. That would be great.
Yeah.
I know there's stuff going on in Star Wars Adventures, and there's stuff going on in other narratives in the High Republic where there's romance. But I'm just like, I just need it. I just feel like that's part of the commentary that's needed after George Lucas sort of made his prequels, and I feel like the prequels were diving, directly into attachment in a major way, but almost in a way that felt like a setup, like for something else to come in and sort of close that gap. But I mean, the sequels do that. Yeah. But I think a lot of fans were. I don't want to say that because the sequels might age incredibly well, and then I think you might like that. Yeah, they have. From a certain point of view, they have. But I do wonder if people sort of want more romance out of Star Wars. Part of the space opera, or part of the opera, I would say, is romance.
I do. I mean, like, clearly they've made this like a really beautiful romance between Avar and Elzar, and it doesn't seem. It seems like the secret's out. Like, this isn't like no one's like
ever at the end of this book.
Yeah, it doesn't even feel like scandalous. Like everyone knows it. Who was the one that said to Elzar, who's like, oh, it was Lena So. It was just like, whoever it is that you love should be grateful that you love her as much as you do. And it's like, if Lena So knows,
like, yes,
she knows.
I remember that. That was great.
Well, Lena So's kid is in.
She's lucky, basically, or whatever.
She's lucky.
Whoever has your heart, like, they're lucky. Yeah. Because I think she's attracted to Elzar Mann, because who wouldn't be? He's like stud Jedi, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there was.
Which also, I always thought Stellan Gios was Elzar Mann, and Elzar Mann was Stellan Gios.
Me too,
When I looked at like the image, I was like, "What?" Like in my head, Stellan Gios just looks like the Elzar Mann
right.
image.
Elzar Mann needs a beard,
and then Elzar Mann has like the gruff, and I was like, "Yeah, he's got the beard, right?"
Yeah, no.
Turns out no, he's like clean shaven. Elzar Mann is like poster boy Jedi sort of look.
Yeah, but he's like kind of the most troubled. Of all of the big three, and like he considers himself below Stellan and Avar in ability, and like that could be true, who knows? But it's like, I know when he lets himself off the chain with the dark side, he is quite powerful. But yeah, he is that storm. Like I love, his whole metaphor with the ocean. I loved that scene, where he just like meditates floating in the ocean. Like I just think that's so great.
Yeah, he's in like chaotic moments in this book where he's like, I remember just floating on the oceans of Ashla, like a moon of Tython. And I also just I love Avar Chris's whole metaphor of like the music and the song and sort of like going to the council and hearing all the the different songs from all the different Jedi and sort of what that means and the cacophony of all that noise, but then like everything's sort of like
becomes
muted when Elzar walks into the room. And sort of Elzar is a whole different beat altogether and like a whole different song altogether. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like and like what does this mean? And like what's going to happen with Elzar and Avar and it's got to be tragic though, because like these books have just been
so tragic.
Super tragic.
It's like, give us a break, guys. Like, come on. I mean, like, listen. It's like,
can they grow old? Can Elzar and Avar grow old?
Yo, what if they made a little Jedi that was like the coolest Jedi ever? Like, imagine if they had a kid. Like, like, and it was just like some crazy Jedi. Like, I don't even know where they would land or who they would be, but like they could make a whole story about their kid. It would be like, forget about it. Like, I don't know. I hope
Skywalkers basically, and sort of like, who Anakin Skywalker could have just been the offspring of sort of a long line of Skywalkers, and I don't know.
Maybe Shmi is like a relative of like, she is the daughter, granddaughter of their like kid or something. Like
they have a daughter, and then or they have a son, and then they marry someone and change their name, and
Or or they have a daughter, and that daughter gets married off, and it's like they're the Skywalkers and something.
I mean,
I mean, I don't know. Like you could do it. You could do it, but like,
like again, we're talking about ridiculous, fan connections and
it's fanfic, but like
it's a way for them to live and their offspring to live on.
Is that so wrong, Grant?
Lives. Is that wrong?
Like, can we just get some dubs? Just give the Jedi some dubs. Like, first of all, like this whole leveler thing, I'm like, it's quite simple, and we've talked about it forever, and it sucks that Adam isn't here because this is his like manifesto, but it's just like, no, you just surround Jedi with human forces, people in stormtrooper armor, whatever, people, that non-force sensitives, right? And the Jedi protect them, and they protect the Jedi from the leveler. The end. Like that's how you deal with a leveler. That's how you win.
Right, like you get a bunch of Visas basically with Beskar armor,
right.
and like fight.
Well, even the RDC or whatever they're called, like that's fine, but put them in proper armor, like. It just makes sense. It's just such a visual, beautiful thing to have a Jedi in front of, like, leading an army of people in armor. I feel like that should be the beginning of it, and that's how they should. That's how they're gonna fight. I don't know, but yeah, like that's what
I can't wait to see how they confront the Nameless, because that's gonna be interesting. They need support, and I think that's actually a poetic image too, because it's the Jedi are always risking their necks for everyone in the galaxy. Right. It's about time that the galaxy,
it's a symbiont
for
circle.
Life and light, like all come together and sort of fight with the Jedi, help the Jedi. Like people actually help and love the Jedi, because I feel like we now need the commentary of when the galaxy was actually super jazzed about the Jedi.
Right.
Like we need that because
Right.
we've gotten the downfall. We've gotten people becoming jaded on the Jedi and sort of the lies from the the top.
Right. Woof.
I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. This book was just a super fun kickoff to Phase 3.
Yeah. But I want it all. Like I want it all right now.
I know. I want to sink my teeth into like what they do with the Nameless and just understand what that is. And that will basically form my opinion about these books. Basically, is like what happens with the Nameless and Marchion Ro's end, whatever that ending is.
All
like that will kind of form my opinion about this entire Odyssey. But
can I pontificate on the Nameless right now? Can I do that? Like just random tinfoil. I think it's either going to be that like they only feed on light side Jedi. So if you're using the dark side, you can defeat them. But I also like I'm pretty sure that like that baton that survived that Marchion Ro's using to control the like Nameless is a Sith artifact. So like that's going like the other shoe's gonna drop on that. Like they're gonna realize like this is a Sith artifact. So it's like
we did say this last week where we were like, I bet the Nameless only eat light side.
Yeah.
Because and then that gives there's a lot of foreshadowing with characters like Elzar Mann and Reith Silas that they might be
Aslan
able to
Rel, right? Like Aslan, like being a dark sider, he seems to have the answers, right? And he's just like, all you need to do is embrace the dark side. It's super easy, and but the Jedi would, of course, like Bel Zettifar.
It's also a way to segue into the Sith, basically.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, and segue into the Acolyte, which is
Yeah,
I guess we should talk about that. The timeline has been pushed. We thought we were going to see Andor season 2 next year. Sounds like not so much. Sounds like it might be 2025, which sounds about right to me. Actually, like I knew that like that season is gonna take some serious doing. It's live action and it's like done really well. And Tony Gilroy is like gonna make sure it's perfect when it's out.
You got to do that post work on the Bothans. It takes like a few months.
Exactly. The Bothan stuff will be serious. Yeah. No, good corollary with the Bothans. But we are gonna allegedly see Skeleton Crew, which I can't believe. Like, there's been like really nothing about shooting, but apparently it's done and over, and they're in post, well into post. And the same with the Acolyte. So we're gonna see 2 live action series next year, which seems like a good amount. And those are both gonna be heavy hitters. And we're also going to get Bad Batch Season 3. I think that's going to be the first thing that's going to come out. And then we're also going to see Tales of the Jedi 2, Season 2.
Oh, cool.
Another animated series. So that's kind of what we have in store for next year, but it might feel light compared to what we've been getting. But then I think it's just going to be like feature film. Like we're going to just get one every year, and it's going to be a thing. I mean, they even had like 2 slated in 1 year, so we'll see.
Right. I think the Acolyte again is like my most anticipated show, and I think many Star Wars fans that's their most anticipated show in terms of like deep lore and expansion of the lore.
Yeah, of the dark side,
whereas
it connects,
Andor obviously is I guess for just quality of storytelling, dialogue, character development, things like that. That's other people's most anticipated show. But and obviously there's the Mando fans out there, but the Acolyte is just I'm sort of not worried about it, but I would say like I do wonder how they do the Sith angle.
Yeah.
Like from that time period where they're in deep hiding.
Yeah.
I wonder if these books do eventually get there, and we'll have to finish Phase 3 and finish maybe the High Republic to understand what the Acolyte is going to explore. Because, and I do wonder because there are legends, novels, things like that cover a good amount of timeline with the Sith Lords in hiding. I'm just interested to see what they choose to be those lords, basically, or those keepers of knowledge. on the dark side, and sort of what that all means, and how it's going to measure up to some of the books that are just astounding works of fiction, like Darth Plagueis, I think, is an incredible book.
Yeah.
Like just an incredible book. You read it, just like, oh,
right.
okay, this makes perfect sense. And they're in the banking guild, and like they're connected to this, and like the
Darth Bane like trilogy.
The Dark Lords, essentially, Darth Bane, obviously, but Darth Bane again has it's been canonized, and so.
Yeah, but not the whole story. But yeah, but Darth Bane
And
himself.
Darth Plagueis is mentioned, canonized via mention.
Yeah, exactly. They're both been canonized via mention, but like, that trilogy, and then obviously the Plagueis book is amazing, and like would be so great to be canon. And I think they'll probably just avoid it and be like, yeah, it like is canon, but don't worry about it.
It's sort of fascinating what they've released in terms of like, public facing information about the Acolyte, which is like, I think Vernestra Rowe is like in that show.
Yeah, which is wild. I don't even know how that would happen, because I think it's supposed to be like 100 years after the end of this. Like, I really expected Phase 3 to end and then Acolyte would begin, and like they wouldn't be contiguous, but like the events of the end of Phase 3 would inform Acolyte. But the way it's going now, Acolyte's going to come out in the middle of Phase 3. Like, it's going to come out in the middle of next year, and Phase 3 is not going to end until, the spring. So it's either time juxtaposition, or they really don't connect as much as I thought they would.
All right, I'm going to throw out my theory here.
All right, let's go.
I think by the end of the High Republic, and there will be inklings of the Sith in the Jedi Order, and about evidence that they're in hiding, things like that. Evidence that the dark side does permeate the galaxy still, in artifacts and in holocrons, and possibly in worshippers or followers of the dark side, the Sith Eternal, if you will. And I have to think that the Acolyte is about one of those darksiders in hiding, taking on an Acolyte.
Sith Bith.
But I gotta think that like Vernestra Rowe and maybe some Jedi of the High Republic end these books with a continued conflict. Like the book will have these books will have a resolution. The High Republic will end as sort of a giant epic, but I think some Jedi will leave the epic in conflict and trying to still solve the darkness that maybe permeates the galaxy, that is infected even the Nile, or created the Nile, or basically there's something else that's deeper and darker in the galaxy. And I would love it if there's a Jedi that's like trying to vanquish the Sith or the dark threat that's sort of revealed, or there's evidence of at the end of these books, and is sort of lost in that storm, or a storm continues within one Jedi. That's what I'm hoping for. And it would be cool if it's Vernestra Rowe, because Vernestra Rowe is basically like a Mace Windu type who wields both light and dark. And so for me, that's like such a cool character to sort of dive into a crusade of fighting the dark, or something like that. So that's what I'm hoping happens with Vernestra Rowe.
I love that. Character. I love that. I was thinking sort of the flip side of that coin, where it's like some people come out being dark side, like they have to flip to the dark side to sort of vanquish the enemy. But like as the war comes to a close, they have to reconcile what they are, and like go off into obscurity, and like what do they become, and like that sort of thing. So it's like maybe
the
it's
fallen ones, if you will,
the fallen ones,
the Dooku novels, or not novel, but the Dooku Lost audio play, or
maybe it's them. I think Elzar Mann is like obviously a big candidate. We talked about him at the beginning of the show. But it could be Imri Kantaros. Like, I don't know, maybe that guy's dead at this point.
But maybe in Acolyte, we're seeing Vernestra Rowe as sort of like the point of view character that is still maybe possibly a fallen one, or possibly someone who not embraced the dark side, but is now walking a darker path. Given that she's such a cool character to do that.
I love. That's kind of. I would say she would be one of the ones that would be like light side. That's like, she's like the one that's keeping an eye on the dark side contingent.
That's what I'm saying. Like someone who fights the dark side. Like is basically but is obviously only the people who are most light. That's again why I like Mace Windu and why I like Sinestro Bow, because if you read some of their bios and stuff like that, it's because they've mastered the light side that they can actually dabble in the dark side, because they'll never be corrupted by it or fall to it. They sort of live on that edge. And to me, I'm like, where is this Disney Plus show? Where is where is the story? Because all I want is young Mace Windu. All I want is Sinestro Row. All I want is sort of that POV character. Because to me, it's like you can now have action sequences where it's light side powers and dark side powers, and someone sort of fighting, back from the fall or the corruption that they're feeling. And to me, that's interesting. That's some of the most compelling Star Wars to me.
Yeah.
So anyways, we covered this book.
I think we
thoroughly, I would say.
Well, I mean, there was a lot to go. I actually only had like a couple of like major points, and we covered all of them, and we actually got our way through it. It was tight. We did the tight thing. We covered it all, man. We covered it all. It was a good.
All right, can I open this Christmas gift you got me?
Oh yeah, buddy. Yeah,
I'm gonna do it.
I know. I feel bad because I didn't get one for Adam yet. I guess this was. Okay. I'm a terrible gift giver. Yeah, there we go. There it is.
Want to set this up?
I'm just gonna set it up real quick. I'm a terrible gift giver, because I have no patience. But it's I just feel like when you find a perfect gift for someone, you just buy it and give it to them. I think that's what gift giving should be, And it's then we have the honorific things, and then I just am scrambling. But I was just we had a conversation 7 podcasts ago, and and I was I want to give this to Grant, so open it up.
All right, I'm tearing into this, dude. It's an unboxing video.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I mean, you knew.
Okay, here we go. TIE Fighter pilot. Oh, First Order. Okay, this is going to complete the First Order collection, my friend.
That's what I'm talking about, buddy.
I got to pose all the figs together.
I know. So we talked about you don't have a lot of pilots, and we had talked about First Order designs, and a lot of them
we talked about this design being rad.
This is my favorite one.
Snowtrooper, rad. The single strip across the eyes. The TIE Fighter pilot.
That's what I meant. So I saw this armor in person in in a costume thing in Denver, and I was overcome with how awesome this design was. I don't really love the Stormtrooper armor, but the pilot armor is elite. And we talked about this on a podcast, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna see.
We did talk about this because we were just you know what is good in the design, the Apple-esque design scheme of
this
the Stormtrooper armor is the TIE Fighter pilot, the Snowtrooper, the Jet Trooper, pretty awesome,
yeah. So I wanted to get this one for you because it's my favorite.
You're the man. Thank you, man. This is too cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Happy holidays to our listeners.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of our holiday casts that I guess we'll do one more before.
I think next
made holidays, but Hanukkah started.
Yeah, Hanukkah started. So here we go.
We're already rolling. This is the first one.
Yeah, and so we're gonna do another High Republic podcast next week, but we're gonna cover whatever comics are out. We're just gonna I know we usually do arcs and whatever, but we can't wait. So we're just gonna cover all the stuff that's happened, because we know it's gonna be integral to what we're doing right now, and it's just the High Republic is so dope. We got to give it its due, and it's happening right now, and so I just want to be okay, it's gonna evolve over the next year, obviously, and we'll try and dip in and bring it all to synergize everything as we always do. To really get a sense of the story, but it's.
I think we were talking about doing a High Republic character draft too.
Yeah, I think we're gonna
do that
character
Jedi draft. Could be super fun. We'll definitely have that. That'll be in store because we did get these character encyclopedias.
Yes.
I think Ben and I are both rifled them.
Right here, buddy.
Yeah.
We the High Republic character encyclopedia came out on December 5th. So if you're looking for a stocking stuffer, you can get them for your friend or for yourself, or ask someone to buy it for you or whatever. It is fantastic. It's 250 characters. It's actually organized very organically. It's not the way that I thought they would organize it. It's all characters that are related to each other, laid out, and the art is beautiful. You've seen a lot of it already. But it's a just great companion piece to reading all the High Republic stuff. It's actually kind of essential. And I mean, on this podcast, we buy all these coffee table books now. It just like kind of organically happened because it's just so great to have this like visual reference to what we're talking about to synergize everything. And like that's what this book is about. So as your attorney, I suggest buying the Star Wars High Republic Character Encyclopedia. If you're into this at all, and even if you're not, like, it's just beautiful. You can see all these characters and know what we're talking about. And maybe it'll lead you to, like, if you just want to read the novels, you can read the novels. You would just want to read the comics, you can read the comics. Like, it doesn't matter what sort of, like, this is the true high art of what Star Wars is doing, where it's like, you can be as involved or as you want, and it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, I'll just read novels. It's like like adult novels through the High Republic are amazing, and you won't miss a beat. It'll be great. But if you want to dig deeper, the comics are amazing as well. Obviously, young adult novels, like I would suggest everyone. Like I'm now like Adam's thing where it's like I think young adult novels is actually more pure Star Wars. Like has resonated with me, and I'm gonna get it tattooed on my body or something. Because it's like so true. It's like that's the core of Star Wars. Like it caters to kids and it caters to adults, and that's exactly what these YA novels have done. They've just picked great authors that just know how to navigate that path that is accessible to pretty much 4-quadrant demographics. So we go on and on and on.
All the books are good. You heard it here first. They're all good.
They're all good.
Yeah, like there's no dud in there. Like everything's essential. Everything explores. They did such a smart, it was such a smart plan to sort of incorporate new and interesting characters and plot mechanics in each book, no matter what the age range was or the format was of the book. And I feel like each book just has a fun little special nugget in it. And so, yeah, I would say dive in anywhere. And then if you're compelled to read, Light of the Jedi or like the first book, like I think that's a great starting point. And then, there's so much in there. It's really special stuff.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's really, the authors they picked for the High Republic are studs. Like they're all ringers, and they understand Star Wars in such a great way. So you're gonna get really great Star Wars stories here, and it's fresh and it's new and it's a different time period, and everything we've been talking about through all this coverage. Man, we did it. Looking forward to getting Adam back next week, getting his view on what we've talked about. And, we'll do the draft with our favorite High Republic Jedi, which is going to be like highly contested because, dude, if I have an opportunity to take Porter Engle.
Yeah, I know.
I'm taking Porter Engle.
Immediate Porter. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's about forming a team that we think would win, in just straight up combat or away missions or fighting the Nile. Like we'll kind of
honestly, Loden Greatstorm. I'm taking Loden Greatstorm. Like I know his fate was ugly and early, but like
I'm a Barish Sylvan guy. I'm an Orla
Jareni. Yeah, I'm twice on Sunday. Orla Jareni.
Yeah. I'm a big Elzar Mann fan, and honestly, Stellan Geos is cool, but R.I.P.
There's a lot of good ones. I'm gonna deep dive because there's like
Ty Yorick.
Ty Yorick for real, yeah. That was the one I was trying to think of Ty Yorick's name because I was gonna say like
listeners are just like, what is a Ty Yorick?
Yeah, Ty Yorick's coming back into the order. I just feel that happening.
Wait, she's a monster hunter, so why wouldn't you bring her in to fight the Nameless?
Who are monsters, literally. That's what I mean. I think Ty Yorick's going to play a big role in this.
That's so cool.
It's so cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just like the way this has been organized, like I'm just like an admin nerd. And like the way that like this has all been organized and executed, it all just like synergizes perfectly with each other, and people have kind of their own characters that they own, but everything's shared and like and it's great.
And also, didn't you feel like this was seamless in terms of like Light of the Jedi and this book in terms of like Charles Soule's writing style of like Bell Zettifar and characters that Charles Soule created. Basically, George Mann just, I think, does an incredible job sort of carrying forward that voice with each character.
Absolutely.
That basically, were created by other writers in the Luminous, group. So cool stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, George Mann hit this out of the park. Like, I can't understate, or I can't overstate that. He really did a fantastic job, because it's a tough job. These novels, these are the big, like, buoys. These are the benchmarks of what the High Republic is, and you've got to really nail it. And he did it. This is a fantastic novel. And man, there's so many more books. I think there's two more adult novels and 3 young adult, and then there's going to be a slew of comics. And I'm here for it. It's going to be great.
I can't wait.
All right, cool.
Let's do it.
We did it, y'all. This is fantastic. We'll be here next week. Thanks very much for listening to you. We love doing this, and we appreciate you listening to us. So we're going to keep going. We'll see you next time on
Cantina Chronicles.